In the early 1980s, Flint, Michigan was a booming General Motors manufacturing hub. It was a place of high employment and decent neighborhoods. It was also home to 16-year-old Sherry Joe Elliot, a disciplined, deeply shy teenager who loved spending hours with her coloring books and matching her outfits before she left the house. On a cold morning in November 1983, she left for her bus stop and vanished. Because she was a teenager, police initially recorded her disappearance as a standard missing person, working under the assumption that she had run away. Her mother immediately rejected that theory. Sherry was so cautious she wouldn't even approach a car asking for directions. Several weeks later in Saginaw County, a local man checking his traps found her body lying face down in a watery ditch. The medical examiner determined she had been held captive for several days, sexually assaulted, and shot 4 times, including an execution-style wound to the back of the head. Investigators scoured the roadside crime scene, but the perpetrator had left behind almost no physical property. By initially labeling a cautious 16-year-old as a runaway, authorities lost the most critical hours of the investigation. That early assumption cost them the narrow window of time necessary to track an abduction, effectively stalling the case before it could truly begin. Desperate for leads, police appealed to the public and received thousands of tips. One eyewitness came forward with a highly specific claim. He saw Sherry get into a yellow Camaro. Using 1980s intelligence gathering, detectives compiled a spreadsheet of thousands of local sports cars matching that exact description. They spent days and then months tracking down the owners. They eventually realized the eyewitness had entirely fabricated the story. With the Camaro man dead, investigators developed a tight focus on the last person to see Sherry alive, her stepfather, Robert Schulz. They brought him in for intense questioning, scrutinized his story, and even coordinated surreptitious phone calls, placing immense pressure on a grieving family member. The leads dried up, and the files went into boxes. Years later, police extracted a DNA profile of an unknown male from the crime scene evidence and uploaded it to the National CODIS database. It returned 0 matches. A mother spent 40 years terrified she would never find the truth, while an innocent stepfather lived under a cloud of suspicion. Human intuition, fabricated eyewitness accounts, and police tunnel vision had completely derailed the search for justice. Decades passed before the investigation saw any real movement. To apply modern analytical techniques today, law enforcement first had to address 40 years of chaotic, scattered paperwork. Students from Western Michigan University stepped in, taking tens of thousands of pages of original detective notes and organizing them into a fully searchable digital platform. They structured the history of the case so it could be cross-referenced at a moment's notice. This monitor displays the type of genetic sequencing that changed the trajectory of the investigation. In early 2025, Michigan State Police sent a piece of heavily degraded evidence from the 1983 crime scene to Othram, a private forensic lab. This animation illustrates forensic-grade genome sequencing. Scientists don't just look for a few standard markers to find a direct match. Instead, they extract a massive, high-density data profile from the compromised sample, mapping hundreds of thousands of individual genetic variations. These dense data points reveal the unknown suspect's biogeographical ancestry. By tracking those specific genetic traits, researchers can cast a wide net and identify deep familial lineages tied to the killer. The National CODIS system only works if the perpetrator's DNA is already on file from a previous arrest. Genomic sequencing bypasses that requirement entirely. Investigators don't need the suspect in the system. They just need to locate a distant relative. Curious, the genetic sweep produced a hit. It led researchers to an elderly woman living in Wichita, Kansas. Detectives flew out to interview her and collect a voluntary sample. The sample confirmed the relation, but it introduced a massive logistical problem. This specific woman had 79 grandchildren. Look at this family tree. To narrow down dozens of potential suspects, investigators cross-referenced the sprawling list of grandchildren against the newly digitized case files, filtering the names by age and geography. The digitized records allowed them to find a definitive Michigan connection. They eliminated relative after relative until only one specific grandchild remained. The remaining suspect was a man named Ronnie Collins. In 1983, he was in his early 30s and had a completely clean criminal record. He worked as a dental hygienist, played in a traveling band, and drove a white van. Buried in the digitized 1983 case files was an original eyewitness tip stating Sherry had been seen near a white van. That information sat unused for decades, while police resources were diverted to the fabricated story about the yellow Camaro. In early 2026, a detective contacted the 75-year-old Collins and arranged an interview. Collins delayed the meeting through the holidays, and when the day finally arrived, he never showed up. When police went to his home with a search warrant for his DNA, they discovered he had committed suicide that exact morning. Investigators collected a sample during his autopsy. The state crime lab tested it directly against the evidence preserved from the watery ditch in 1983. The results confirmed a 1-to-1 match. The genetic data provided the proof required to link Ronnie Collins directly to the murder. It also formally exonerated Robert Schulz, though the vindication arrived a year after he had passed away. Collins avoided a prison sentence and a trial, but the precision of genomic science dismantled his lifelong alibi and removed an unjust burden from a grieving family. Now, investigators face a disturbing reality. It is highly unusual for a perpetrator to escalate directly to abduction and execution without a prior history of violence. Detectives are actively reviewing other cold cases in the region. They are looking closely at the 1969 disappearance of 2 teenage girls in Oscoda, Michigan. This map illustrates the geographical overlap. By connecting the locations, police found that Collins' band was playing in Oscoda the exact weekend those girls vanished. The last time they were seen, they were getting into a white van. For Sherry Joe's mother, the resolution brought a complex wave of relief and deep sorrow. After 43 years of nightmares, she finally has the truth about what happened to her daughter. We often rely on eyewitness memory and gut instinct to solve crimes, but human bias can obscure the truth for decades. Advanced DNA sequencing removes that margin of error, using hard data to expose violent offenders who spend their lives as seemingly unremarkable members of our communities.